Back, everybody. We are celebrating Financial Aid Awareness Month here at College Coach in the month of February. And joining me today to do another in our segment for this special celebration is my colleague, Beth Feinberg Keenan, who also happens to be a former financial aid officer at Northeastern University. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Beth.
It's funny, we were just talking about Northeastern because we were talking about study abroad programs and how Northeastern was kind of a pioneer in this area, starting college abroad. So, and here we are continuing, not with that theme at all, but with Northeastern as a source. So, in this segment today, we were talking about the idea that the financial aid office at an individual college can really be both a resource and an ally for you in the process. And so I was hoping that we could talk a little bit more about the ways in which they can help, starting with early in the college process, because I think we often don't turn to the financial aid office until we have our acceptances in hand and we're maybe unhappy with the award and we're looking for more, right? But really, they can help earlier in the process. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Definitely. Well, the first thing is, don't be scared to contact the financial aid office. I mean, there are people just like, you and I are, Beth.
Yes.
And that's what their role is. They're there to really help guide and assist families in affording that particular institution. But there's so many ways that you can interact with the financial aid office, whether in person or even virtually.
Mhm.
So if you're going to be on campus and you're going to an open house, if you're doing a tour, you want to speak with the financial aid office, make an appointment. They're busy, so it's important that you don't just show up and expect that somebody's going to be able to meet with you. But if there's things that you want to find out, things that you want to learn about financial aid that you can't find on their website, then see if you're able to make an appointment. If you're not going to be on campus, see if you can make a phone appointment, see if you can do a virtual appointment, because just like I'm working remotely, many financial aid offices are also still working remotely. So you may show up and there's nobody in the office that can assist you at that time and day when you go there. But the website is your friend too. I think that there's so much information on the website. As your student is researching colleges, look at what are the financial aid deadlines? What are the applications that they require to apply for financial aid? So know that many students will start kind of tracking and putting together some type of tracking tool to put like admission schools that they're interested in, admissions deadlines, applications, add columns for financial aid. You can find that on their website. Look at the cost of attendance, if financial fit is a deciding factor. Think about types of financial aid that are offered. You can find all of that on the college websites. And I encourage all families, specifically really in like junior year of high school, early and senior year, to make use of the net price calculators on the college websites. So whether it's an in-person conversation, whether it's you're getting information off their website, as you mentioned, Beth, there's so much information families can get early on in their research.
Yes, absolutely. And so now we're past the research phase. Your student has decided where they're going to be applying to college. And as a parent, now it's time for you to complete the financial aid applications. And maybe the student is doing that alongside the parent, or maybe it's just the parent. Can the financial aid office help with that piece of the process?
You know, they can. They're not necessarily going to sit down with you and walk through the application with you line by line.
Hmm.
So if you do have questions on the financial aid application and you're not sure, you're getting stuck. Like, I don't know how to answer this question, whether it's the FAFSA or the CSS profile. How do I answer this question specifically for maybe an institution? Give them a call. Um, you might get somebody who's just on the front lines. They might not be able to help you. So you might have to make an appointment to speak with a financial aid administrator at the school, but give it a shot. They might also have other resources for you. I know, like when I worked in an aid office at Northeastern, as Beth mentioned, we actually used to do high school nights. So we actually used to staff probably 2 to 3 high school nights. But with the age of COVID, I don't know how many schools are still doing that, if they're doing anything virtually, but many schools often are aware of resources within their area that
Mhm.
might offer some type of guidance. Maybe it's a live webinar, maybe it's a taped webinar that you can, participate in, and maybe they have somebody who's actually walking line by line during that
Right,
presentation, and you can get it on demand. And you're like, hey, like, I didn't even realize I had that, that somebody's made these presentations. You know what?
right.
You're probably not the first person who has a question about filling out the financial aid application.
Yeah, it's a little scary. I will say I've been doing this work for 20 years. I have an entire team of people who are experts in this, and I have been putting off filling out the FAFSA because I started to do it and I got a little intimidated, which is
No.
silly. I know. But so I guess all of this to say that I get it. I do. And I feel for parents. And I know in the end, it's really not that hard, but it feels like it will be. And I think that's the hope is we can get past that. And I know they're doing some things to try and streamline the FAFSA, but I will caveat this by saying that if I thought we were going to qualify for aid, we would have applied by the deadlines on time. I am a little bit dragging my feet, mostly because the only reason we'll submit it would be so that my son might be eligible for a work study position or something like that. But it isn't essential to our process right now. Otherwise, if you haven't submitted it, and it is essential, drop everything, stop listening to this, and go fill out the FAFSA. So anyway, but that's good advice. I don't know that I ever thought about calling the financial aid office if I had a question about the FAFSA, and maybe they're busy and wouldn't be able to help, but they might offer some resources, like you say. So families are going to start, if they haven't already, they're going to start receiving financial aid award letters from colleges alongside those acceptances. If they need more help, or their help to understand the letter, or maybe they're looking for more money, where's the first place that they should go, in your
They
opinion?
really need to call the financial aid office.
Yeah.
If they've had a change in circumstances, it's important that they communicate that with the financial aid office, because maybe that change in circumstances might warrant a reevaluation of the
Mhm.
family's ability to pay. And if it doesn't warrant a reevaluation of your ability to pay, then you know what? You actually might qualify for additional need-based financial assistance.
Mhm.
But the other thing that also always comes to like the forefront, I think about, is like every school doesn't have the resources to meet 100% of financial need. And so you may be thinking like, hey, I filed for financial aid and the results came back that I should be only expected to pay $10,000 or $20,000.
Mhm.
And this financial aid package is, it's really good. It's, $20,000, $30,000, but it's now I have to pay $40,000. And where does the school think that I can come up with that money? I
Right.
mean, I can't tell you how many times I have conversations currently today with families who are like, how did they expect me to pay the difference? And I mean, it doesn't hurt to call the aid office. I mean, the worst that they're going to tell you is no, there's nothing else that they're going to be able to do. But you're going to be able to make an informed decision. Like,
Mhm.
hey, if this is what it's looking like for year one, what's necessarily going to change in years 2, 3, and 4? Like, if you can't afford it year one, or you're saying, hey, it's a stretch for year one, think about the big picture.
Right.
Because, aid offices want to make the school affordable and they want to help students enroll at their school, but they also just don't have like unlimited drawers of money that like, hey, thanks for calling, or,
Right.
why did I'm so happy that you came in today because let me just open up my bottom drawer and I'll just pull out,
Right.
some
Another
extra money.
$10,000.
Exactly. Like that was one of the things that I least liked about when I was in an aid off, is that I'd have a family sitting there right in front of me. We didn't necessarily have appointments at that time. They could walk in and they'd have their student there in front of me and being like, we can't afford this. And this is like our second or third child. And I'm like, I can maybe help with a couple $1,000s, but some of them had like gaps of like 20, 10, $15,000. And like, I get it. Aid officers are there to help. And yes, they have, I was going to say, limitations. It doesn't mean that they can't offer additional assistance, especially if there's changes in circumstances, or maybe that they've gapped you, that you don't
Mhm.
have enough financial aid to meet what you're expected to pay. But, expectations have to be realistic too. I mean, schools
Right.
don't necessarily have an extra 10, 15, $20,000 laying around for every family that says, hey, that's what I really need, to
Right.
make this school affordable.
Right, exactly. Well, and it goes back to what you were saying about starting with the financial aid office early and making use of those tools that they make available on their website. And they're not always the most accurate, but it will give you at least some idea of what you can anticipate. So it shouldn't be, in a perfect world, a total shock if you get an award that's less than you thought it might be.
Yeah.
What about you file your paperwork, you filled out those, you went, you did your research and you used the calculators and you did all that. But then in the time between when the FAFSA or the CSS profile or both were filed, you had a change in circumstances. What do you do then? Is the aid office the first call you should make again?
Definitely. Schools aren't necessarily going to be able to make a decision right on the spot. Check the school's website. Some of the schools may actually have a form that they require families to fill out, where they're asking you like, what is that specific change and outlining it. And then they're also going to ask for supporting documentation. So be prepared. Like if you've had a change in income, like they're going to want to see what you've made year to date. They're going to want to see if you're collecting unemployment. They're going to want to see if you have a severance, because they're not just going to say, hey, your income went from X to 0.
Right.
They want to look at, big picture. What does that change really mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I think calling the aid office, having an initial conversation, if that's going to give you that peace of mind, and then knowing that you're going to have additional steps. If you don't necessarily need to have that initial conversation, you know what? Put together an email. Fill out the form if the school has a form. Lay it all out for them. Make sure you have the supporting documentation and send it along, and then follow up with a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a change in circumstances. I've sent an email. I included X, Y, and Z. Is there anything else you need from us? We want to make sure that, when you're reviewing what's really happened right now, that there's nothing missing and you're able to come back to us and, tell us if there's anything else that you can do to help.
Right, right. But yeah, I think so important, right? You have to reach out. I think going back again to one of your earlier points, which is you can't be afraid to contact financial aid, that they can't help you if you don't reach out and initiate a conversation with them about that. Here's another question that sometimes come up. Maybe you get a financial aid package, it includes loans, but the family needs to find them. Can the financial aid office actually recommend loan options that will help you cover the balance if you can't afford it?
So typically most financial aid packages are going to include a federal student loan. And most, aid officers are going to say, hey, if you need to borrow, that is the loan that the family should take out first. Students should take out the federal loan that's been offered to them. But above and beyond that, no, aid officers are not recommending a lender. They're not recommending whether you go with a plus loan or whether you go with a private loan. That's a family decision. Yeah. They have tools and they have resources. Many schools will list a large list of lenders on their website of who they've processed loans through in the past. Many schools also have tools, something like Elm Select or another tool called Fast Track, where families can put in information about what they're looking for in a loan, fixed interest rate, parents taking out, students taking out, variable interest rates. So they'll look at those different components, and then you'll get a grid or you'll get a list of different lenders that you now can, review,
right,
and look at, what makes the most amount of sense for your family and your specific circumstances in borrowing.
Right. And I think that's good, though, to your point, why, they can't be in the business of recommending specific loan providers, because that gets them into a whole other world that they don't want to be in.
Bet.
All right, last question. And you did mention earlier that, what the financial aid package you receive is for the first year. And can the financial aid office help families to plan out what they should expect beyond that first year? In terms of what they might see in increased tuition, whether or not their financial aid might increase to match that increased cost. How can you take advantage of the financial aid office in that situation?
So some colleges take it one step further. Like I know, like when I was at Northeastern, we had a nice packet that we used to send to students who deposited, not all admitted students, but deposited students. And it allowed them really to plan out their 4 years. But yes, financial aid administrators can help with those conversations. Most of the scholarships that students receive, those are guaranteed for the 4 years, as long as the student meets certain requirements of GPA, maybe major specific. And then if it's need-based financial assistance that's offered, that's going to really depend on the college. I mean, if your circumstances don't change from year to year, most schools will say, hey, that there were, I want to say like guaranteeing it, but you shouldn't see much of a change.
Right.
But for some of the schools that do meet full financial need as determined by the financial aid applications, as college prices go up, and if your expected family contribution stays steady, then maybe you might actually see a slight increase in the financial aid that you're receiving from year to year. But I think colleges, they know what their policies are. They know what their trends have been. So they're going to be able to tell you, like, on average, yes, our tuition increases 2%. Our tuition increases, our costs increase 3% or more. And hey, what else are, we looking at that, our packages stay steady. You can expect an increase in student loans slightly each year, but beyond that, maybe they don't do anything. And so then you as a family have to plan for those.
Right.
Those increases in tuition.
Exactly. And I do really, really like your point and kind of almost want to end on that note, which is you should certainly be looking ahead and planning it out and making sure that if you're concerned about how you're going to afford it in year 1, that's only going to get worse in years 2, 3, and 4, and possibly 5 if a student takes a little longer to graduate. And you need to be smart about it and don't get yourself into something that is going to really cause you significant financial hardship when it's all said and done. Beth, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Beth, for having me. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Yeah, you too. All right, we're going to go to commercial, but when we come back, we are talking about college visits, so don't go away.